When a determined woman confronts the billionaire who stole her family's land, a buried secret threatens to destroy his empire. But will the truth be enough to set her free? The scorching Texas sun beat down mercilessly on the endless stretch of Highway 271, turning the asphalt into a shimmering, wavering mirage. The heat seemed to rise in visible waves, and not a single tree stood to offer shade. Cars sped by, their drivers desperate to escape the suffocating air. But one car stood still, a sleek, silver Maserati Quattroporta, its polished surface now marred by the faint wisps of smoke rising from the hood. Ethan Marshall, CEO of Lancaster Group, a multinational conglomerate worth billions, stepped out of the stalled vehicle. Sweat clung to his crisp white shirt, now plastered to his back, and his forehead glistened with moisture. His usually composed expression was replaced by a mix of frustration and disbelief. "This can't be happening," he muttered, yanking off his silk tie and tossing it into the driver's seat. His eyes darted to his platinum Swiss watch, 11:43 a.m. Only 17 minutes left until his billion-dollar strategy meeting with investors, a meeting that could decide the future of Lancaster Group, the legacy he had inherited from his ruthless father, Charles Redford. Ethan's jaw tightened, his fingers anxiously tapping against the side of the car. He was used to controlling everything: markets, negotiations, even people, but now he was utterly powerless, stranded on a desolate road with no cell service and no backup. Suddenly, the distant rumble of an engine broke the oppressive silence. An old, battered Ford F-150 pickup truck appeared on the horizon, sputtering and struggling, yet persistent. As it pulled to a stop beside his luxury car, a woman climbed out, a woman Ethan would have dismissed under any other circumstances. Her name was Naomi Turner. Her dark brown skin shimmered under the blazing sun, her work gloves stained with oil, and her jeans marked with grease. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her sharp, clear eyes surveyed the scene with the confidence of someone who knew her way around an engine. "Car trouble?" she asked flatly, her voice calm, almost indifferent. Ethan frowned, instinctively taking a step back. He wasn't used to being approached so directly, especially by a stranger. His gaze swept over her, noting the oil stains on her shirt, the worn leather gloves hanging from her pocket. A mechanic, clearly. A woman? A black woman? Fixing cars on the side of the road? The image clashed with every preconception he held. "Yes," he replied, his voice edged with frustration. "Overheated, I think." Naomi's eyes lingered on him for a brief moment, a flicker of something almost like amusement crossing her face. "Pop the hood." Ethan hesitated, caught between his irritation and his desperation. But he needed help, and this woman was the only option. He reached into the car, pulled the hood release, and stepped aside as Naomi leaned in. In less than 30 seconds, she had diagnosed the problem. "Cooling system's shot. You're lucky you didn't blow the engine." Ethan's pride flared. "I'm not sure if you—" "I know what I'm doing," Naomi cut him off, her tone steady but firm. "I run Riverside Auto Shop in Greenwood Valley, 10 miles from here." Ethan's mouth snapped shut, his gaze hardening. He wasn't used to being interrupted, even less so by someone he viewed as beneath his world. But Naomi didn't seem to care. She was already back at her truck, pulling out an old, oil-stained toolbox. "I can rig a temporary fix," she called out, walking back to the Maserati. "You'll have about 2 hours before it overheats again. Enough to get you to the city." Ethan watched in a mix of disbelief and reluctant admiration as her hands moved with the precision of a surgeon. She tightened a hose, adjusted a clamp, and carefully redirected the coolant flow. Her focus was absolute, her expression calm. She wasn't asking for his approval, his permission, or his praise. Minutes later, she stepped back, wiping her hands on a rag. "You're good to go for now." Ethan reached into his wallet, pulling out a few crisp $100 bills. "Here." For your trouble." Naomi's gaze fell on the money, but as she reached out to take it, something caught Ethan's eye. The sunlight reflected off a small silver ring on her left hand, its sapphire stone glowing a deep, rich blue. Ethan's breath caught. His pulse quickened. That ring, it was impossible. The design, the delicate silver band, the sapphire. It was unmistakable. He had seen that ring before. He had given it to a girl he had promised to return to a promise he had forgotten. His gaze shot up, scanning Naomi's face, desperately searching for something familiar. But the girl he remembered was just a shadow, a distant, blurry memory. And this woman, she was strong, confident, her expression unreadable. "That ring," he stammered, his voice tight. "Where did you get it?" Naomi's fingers instinctively closed around the ring, her eyes narrowing. "It was my mother's." "Why? Is there a problem?" Ethan's mind raced. Memories surged back like a tidal wave. The old orphanage, the promise under the oak tree, the little girl who had believed him. But she was gone. That world was gone. And yet, here she was. Or was she? I thought it looked familiar," Ethan managed, trying to regain his composure. Naomi's expression remained steady, but there was a flicker of something, suspicion, curiosity, or perhaps recognition. She pocketed the money and turned, walking back to her truck. "If it breaks down again, head to Greenwood Valley," she called out over her shoulder. "Riverside Auto Shop, behind the old wooden sign." And then she was gone. Her truck sputtered to life, and she drove away, leaving Ethan standing beside his luxury car, his heart racing, his mind spinning. He stared at the shimmering heat on the horizon, his thoughts a storm of confusion. Was it possible? Could she be? No, it couldn't be. But as he climbed back into his Maserati, his gaze drifted to the reflection of the sapphire ring in his mind. A ring that was supposed to be a promise, but had become a forgotten memory. And in that moment, Ethan Marshall's carefully controlled world began to crack. Naomi Turner's hands gripped the steering wheel of her battered Ford F-150, her knuckles white against the sun-worn leather. The old truck rattled and groaned as it made its way back toward Greenwood Valley, the hot Texas wind whipping through the open windows. But Naomi barely noticed the heat or the dry air that stung her eyes. Her mind was racing, her chest tight with a storm of emotions she couldn't quite name. Anger. Yes, frustration, absolutely. But beneath it all was something else, something she had spent years burying under the weight of her responsibilities. Something she hadn't felt in decades, the raw, aching sting of betrayal. Ethan Marshall. He had stood there, just like before, the same sharp jawline, the same piercing eyes, though now colder, harder, like a man molded by money and power. But he hadn't recognized her. Not a hint of recognition, not a flicker of memory in his gaze. To him, she was just a stranger, a nameless woman covered in grease, fixing his luxury car on a scorching highway. The ring on her finger felt heavier than ever. Her mother's ring, or at least, that's what she had always told herself. In truth, it was a ring she had never dared to remove, a silver band set with a sapphire stone, a promise once given to her by a boy who swore he would return. "I'll come back," he had whispered, his voice earnest, his young hands trembling as he slipped the ring onto her tiny finger. "I promise." But he never did. And she had never forgotten. Naomi's truck roared and sputtered as she turned onto the gravel path leading to Riverside Auto Shop, her sanctuary. The large, rusted sign creaked in the wind, the paint peeling to reveal the faded letters beneath. This was her world, a world of wrenches, oil stains, and the comforting hum of engines. A place where she was in control, where she wasn't just some forgotten girl from an orphanage. Pushing open the garage door, Naomi was met with the familiar scent of motor oil and heated metal. The sunlight filtered through the dusty windows, casting warm, golden beams across the scattered tools and grease-stained workbenches. She tossed her gloves onto the nearest table and leaned against the hood of an old Chevy, her heart still racing. "Are you okay, Mom?" Naomi looked up to see Clara, her 13-year-old daughter, standing in the doorway, her dark curls spilling over her shoulders. Clara's wide, curious eyes were filled with concern, and Naomi's heart softened. In Clara's gaze, she saw a reflection of herself, a girl who deserved a future free from the shadows of the past. "I'm fine, sweetheart," Naomi managed, forcing a smile. "Just a long day." Clara frowned, unconvinced, but didn't press further. "Uncle Henry called. He said the radiator for the blue truck came in." "Should I bring it over?" Naomi nodded, grateful for the distraction. "Yeah, that would be great. Just make sure you stay on the side of the road." Clara smiled, gave her mom a quick hug, and darted out the door. Naomi watched her go, her chest tightening again. Clara was her world, the one bright light that had kept her going through years of hardship. But now, with Ethan's return, memories Naomi had tried so hard to bury were clawing their way back to the surface. She had grown up at New Hope Orphanage, a small, struggling home for lost children. That's where she met him, Ethan Marshall. No, Ethan Marshall now. Back then, he had been just another lonely boy in a world that didn't care about kids without families. But to her, he had been everything: a friend, a protector, someone who made her believe in dreams. But then one day, he was gone. No warning, no goodbye. The orphanage director had simply announced that Brandon had left adopted by a wealthy family. The same week, the orphanage's funding was cut, and within months, the place was shut down. Naomi, like the other children, was scattered, placed in foster homes, where she was treated more like a servant than a daughter. Naomi clenched her fists, the sharp pain of her nails digging into her palms, bringing her back to the present. Those memories were old scars, but seeing Ethan, knowing he had become a powerful, wealthy man, it felt like salt poured on a wound she had long tried to ignore. "Stop it, Naomi," she whispered to herself, shaking her head. "That was a lifetime ago. He's nothing to you now." But even as she said the words, she knew they weren't true. The past wasn't gone. It had just been buried, and now it was clawing its way back to the surface. The bell above the shop door chimed, and Henry Blake stepped inside, his broad shoulders filling the doorway. His graying beard and calloused hands were signs of a life spent working under hoods and fixing engines. He had been more than an uncle to Naomi. He was her only real family, the one who had taken her in when she had nowhere else to go. "Got the radiator, kid?" he called out, setting the heavy metal part on the counter. "Clara said you seemed upset. Everything okay?" Naomi hesitated, then sighed. "I ran into someone today. Someone I never thought I'd see again." Henry's brow furrowed. "Good someone or bad someone?" "Both," Naomi whispered. "Ethan Marshall. But I knew him as Brandon, the boy from New Hope." Henry's eyes widened, then softened with understanding. "After all these years, how?" "His car broke down, right there on the highway." "He didn't even recognize me, Henry. Not even a flicker of memory." Henry leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. "Well, that's the problem with people like him. When they climb high enough, they forget who they stepped on to get there." Naomi laughed, but it was a bitter, hollow sound. "I wasn't even someone he stepped on. I was just forgotten." Henry stepped closer, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "You were never forgotten, Naomi, not by me, not by Clara. You built a life here, a good life." Naomi nodded, her gaze falling to the grease-stained floor. "But he has no idea what he did, how everything changed after he left." "You want him to know?" Henry asked, his voice calm but serious. "I don't know," Naomi admitted. "Part of me wants to forget I ever saw him. But part of me wants to make him see, make him remember." Henry sighed, giving her shoulder a gentle squeeze. "Well, that's a choice only you can make." But whatever you do, don't let the past drag you back into the dark. You fought too hard to get here." Naomi smiled, feeling a small flicker of warmth return to her heart. "Thanks, Uncle Henry." Henry nodded, picking up his toolbox and heading toward the back of the shop. But as the door swung shut behind him, Naomi's gaze drifted to the silver ring on her finger, the sapphire catching the light, a reminder of a promise made and forgotten. She twisted the ring slowly, her jaw tightening. Ethan might not remember her, but she remembered him. She remembered the promise he broke, the life she lost, and the truth buried beneath the ashes of new hope. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across Riverside Auto Shop, Naomi knew one thing for certain: the past was far from over. The old metal drawer groaned as Naomi Turner pulled it open, her fingers stained with grease as she rummaged through the scattered papers. Receipts, spare part invoices, faded manuals, they were all jumbled together, but she knew what she was looking for. At the very bottom, beneath a dusty old folder, her fingers brushed against the edge of a thin, weathered envelope. Naomi pulled it out, her heart pounding. The envelope was yellowed with age, the edges crinkled and brittle. The faded ink on the front read, "To Naomi, from Mom." She slipped the letter out carefully, the fragile paper feeling like it could tear at any moment. Her eyes scanned the familiar handwriting, the elegant, slanted script of her mother, Lillian Monroe. "My dearest Naomi, I didn't abandon you. They forced me to disappear. Never forget who you are. Love, Mom." Naomi's breath caught. She had read this letter 100 times over the years, each time feeling the same sting of confusion and pain. Her mother hadn't left her, but who had forced her to disappear? And why? And how was it all connected to the orphanage that had shut down so suddenly? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a truck pulling up outside. Naomi quickly tucked the letter back into the envelope and shoved it into her pocket. The garage door rattled open, and Henry Blake stepped inside, his graying beard catching the light. "Hey, Naomi," he called out, wiping his hands on an old rag. "Got a few customers asking about the pickup service. Figured I'd come by and—" He paused, noticing the tense look on her face. "You okay?" Naomi hesitated, then sighed. "I'm not sure, Uncle Henry. Do you remember when I came to live with you?" Henry leaned against the workbench, his expression softening. "Of course I do. You were just a scared little thing, barely 14. New Hope Orphanage had just shut down and, well, you had nowhere else to go." "But why did it shut down?" Naomi pressed, her voice a mix of frustration and desperation. "I remember them saying it was because of funding, but what if that wasn't true?" Henry's brow furrowed. "What makes you say that?" I met someone yesterday," Naomi admitted. "A man, Ethan Marshall." "But I knew him as Brandon, the boy I grew up with at the orphanage, the boy who promised he would come back." Henry's eyes darkened. "And he didn't?" "No. He left, and then suddenly the orphanage was closed. The director told us the funding was cut, and we were all scattered. I ended up here, but the others, I don't know what happened to them." Henry sighed, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the workbench. "Naomi, there's something I never told you. I wasn't sure it would help, but maybe now it's time you knew." Naomi's heart raced. "Knew what?" "Your mother, Lillian. She didn't just disappear. I was told by a friend who worked at the county office that she tried to fight the land transfer for the property where the orphanage stood. She believed it belonged to your family, that it was taken from you." Naomi felt a chill run down her spine. "Taken? By who?" Henry's jaw tightened. "Lancaster Group. Charles Redford. The man who built his empire by swallowing up properties across Greenwood Valley. Your mother tried to fight them, but then she vanished. And right after that, the orphanage was shut down." Naomi's mind spun. Lancaster Group, the same company Ethan now ran. Her heart pounded against her ribs. "And Ethan, His father is Charles Redford. That can't be a coincidence. No, it can't, Henry agreed, his voice grim. But Naomi, these are powerful people. They buried the truth a long time ago. Trying to dig it up could be dangerous. Naomi's gaze hardened. I don't care. They took everything from me. From my mother. I can't just let it go. Henry sighed, but there was a spark of pride in his eyes. Then we have to be smart about it. No rushing in blind. We need proof. Naomi nodded, her mind already racing. I have the letter my mother left me, the one where she said they forced her to disappear. But that's not enough. We need more. There are records, Henry suggested. Land deeds, transfer documents. If Charles Redford really took the land, there has to be a paper trail. Then we start there, Naomi declared. I won't let them get away with this. The rest of the day was a blur of engine repairs and oil changes, but Naomi's mind was elsewhere. That night, after closing the shop and tucking Clara into bed, Naomi sat at her kitchen table, a laptop glowing in front of her. The screen displayed the Greenwood Valley County Records website, but most of the documents were locked behind access permissions. Frustrated, she leaned back in her chair, her gaze drifting to the letter once more. They forced me to disappear. But who were they? And how? And why did they want the land so badly? Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. A text from Henry. Got a contact at County Records. Old friend. Might be able to help. Let you know tomorrow. Naomi smiled, a flicker of hope warming her heart. She wasn't alone. Henry was with her, just like he always had been. But as she stared at the screen, another name flashed in her mind. Ethan Marshall. Did he know what his family had done? Was he just another victim like her? Or was he part of it? Naomi's fingers hovered over the keyboard before she gave in to the impulse. She typed his name into the search bar, her heart pounding. Images filled the screen, Ethan in a tailored suit, standing next to Charles Redford at corporate galas, shaking hands with politicians, even a headline, Ethan Marshall, CEO of Lancaster Group, set to marry Sophia Harris. Sophia Harris, a beautiful, blonde socialite and heiress. Naomi's stomach twisted. Of course. He was living in a world of wealth and power while she was fighting to make ends meet in a dusty auto shop. He probably didn't even remember her. Or worse, he remembered, but didn't care. Her gaze drifted back to the ring on her finger, the sapphire catching the kitchen light. The promise he made, a promise he broke, but this wasn't just about a broken promise anymore. This was about her mother. About the land that had been stolen, about the truth they tried to bury. Naomi's jaw clenched. If Ethan Marshall had forgotten, she would make him remember, and if Lancaster Group thought they could erase her mother's name, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The next morning, as the first light of dawn broke over Greenwood Valley, Naomi was already at the shop, her hands steady but her heart racing. Henry's old truck pulled up, and he stepped out, a small folder in his hand. Got something for you, he said, handing it to her. Naomi opened the folder, and her breath caught. A photocopy of a land transfer document, the land where New Hope Orphanage once stood, transferred to Lancaster Group, signed by Charles Redford. Her fingers tightened around the paper. They stole it. They took everything. Henry nodded, his voice somber. And they thought no one would remember. Naomi's gaze hardened, a fierce determination burning in her eyes. But I do, and I'm going to make sure everyone else does too. Naomi Turner's heart raced as she stood outside the sleek glass facade of Lancaster Tower, the imposing headquarters of Lancaster Group. The shimmering skyscraper loomed over Greenwood Valley like a silent, unyielding giant, a symbol of power, wealth, and everything that had been taken from her. The lobby was a world away from the grease-stained walls of Riverside Auto Shop. Polished marble floors stretched beneath her feet, reflecting the dazzling light from a crystal chandelier overhead. A giant digital screen displayed Lancaster Group's latest luxury projects, high-rise condominiums, sprawling resorts, and the Aurora Rising Complex, a massive real estate development that Naomi now knew had been built on stolen land. Her fingers tightened around the thin, creased folder in her hands, the documents she and Henry had uncovered. Photocopies of land transfers, signed by Charles Redford, the fraudulent death certificate of her mother, Lillian Monroe, evidence of a conspiracy that had destroyed her family. And now she was standing in the lion's den, facing the man she once thought she knew. "Mom, can I help you?" A crisp, polite voice interrupted her thoughts. Naomi turned to see a young, sharply dressed receptionist, her professional smile barely hiding the mild suspicion in her eyes. Naomi wasn't dressed for a place like this. Her worn jeans, oil-stained jacket, and sturdy work boots looked almost comically out of place against the backdrop of wealth and opulence. "I need to speak with Ethan Marshall," Naomi said, her voice steady but her heart pounding. "Do you have an appointment?" the receptionist asked, her fingers already tapping on the keyboard. "No, but he knows me," Naomi insisted. "It's urgent. I'm afraid Mr. Marshall has a very busy schedule today. If you'd like, I can—" "Tell him it's Naomi Turner," Naomi interrupted, leaning forward. "And tell him it's about New Hope Orphanage." The receptionist's fingers paused, her eyes flickering with a hint of curiosity. "One moment, please." Naomi stood there, her gaze fixed on the silver elevator doors at the far end of the lobby. Each second felt like an eternity. What would he do? Would he remember? Would he turn her away? Or worse, would he pretend not to know her? A soft chime rang, and the receptionist's voice returned, now tinged with surprise. "Mr. Marshall will see you." "Please take the express elevator to the 32nd floor." Naomi's legs felt weak, but she forced herself to walk with purpose, each step echoing against the marble floors. The elevator doors slid open with a quiet whisper, and she stepped inside, the mirrored walls reflecting her anxious expression. The doors closed, and the hum of the elevator began, carrying her upward toward a confrontation she had both dreaded and dreamed of for years. When the doors opened, she stepped into a corridor lined with glass walls. The view beyond stretched out over the city, the sunlight painting the skyscrapers in gold and silver. At the far end of the corridor, a tall, sleek glass door bore the name Ethan Marshall, CEO. A woman with a tablet stood by the door, her polite smile not reaching her eyes. "Right this way, Miss Turner." Naomi followed, her pulse thundering in her ears. As the door swung open, she saw him, Ethan, standing by the wide, floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to her, his gaze fixed on the city skyline. He looked every bit the powerful executive sharp suit, polished shoes, a presence that commanded respect. But as the door clicked shut, he turned, and for a brief moment there was something in his eyes, confusion, recognition, and a hint of vulnerability. "Naomi," he began, his voice measured. "What is this about?" She stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "You don't recognize me, do you?" "Not really." Ethan's expression remained guarded. "I remember you, from the highway." "From the highway?" Naomi scoffed, bitterness dripping from her words. "Is that all? You really don't remember New Hope Orphanage? You don't remember the promise you made?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "That was a long time ago." "For you, maybe," Naomi shot back. "For me, it was everything. You left and then everything fell apart. The orphanage was shut down, the kids scattered, and my mother disappeared." "I didn't have anything to do with that," Ethan protested, his voice rising defensively. "I was just a kid." "You were just a kid who forgot," Naomi hissed, stepping closer. "But your father didn't. Charles Redford. He took the land, my family's land. He forced my mother to disappear. And now you're standing here, running his empire, building your dreams on the ashes of mine." Ethan's face paled. I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, But you do, Naomi snapped, throwing the folder onto his glass desk. Go ahead, take a look. See what your perfect little empire is built on. Ethan's eyes flicked to the folder, but he didn't move. Naomi, this isn't... Open it! Naomi's voice cracked, anger and desperation mixing in her tone. Look at what your father did. Look at what you've become a part of. Reluctantly, Ethan reached for the folder, his fingers trembling slightly. He flipped it open, his eyes scanning the documents, the land transfer signed by Charles Redford, the fake death certificate of Lillian Monroe, the map of the Aurora Rising complex, built over the very land that had once been Naomi's home. This can't be true, Ethan whispered, his voice weak. It is, Naomi said, her voice softer now but still sharp. Your father built his empire on stolen land, on broken lives.
And you're standing in the middle of it, pretending not to see. Ethan's hand clenched around the edge of the desk, his gaze fixed on the papers. I didn't know. Didn't you? Naomi challenged. Or did you just not care? Because you got everything, the wealth, the power, the family name, while I was left with nothing. I didn't choose any of this. Ethan's voice rose, his eyes burning with a mix of shame and anger. You think I wanted to be the heir to a corrupt empire? To spend my life chasing profits I never cared about? Then walk away, Naomi whispered. Do the right thing. Help me fix this. Ethan's gaze met hers, his expression torn. And what do you expect me to do? Turn against my father? Tear down everything I've ever known? If it's built on lies, then yes, Naomi replied. Or is your loyalty to him more important than the truth? Ethan's face hardened. You don't understand. No, you don't understand, Naomi cut him off, stepping back. Your father destroyed my family. He erased my mother's name, stole our land, and buried the truth. But I won't let it stay buried. Not anymore. She turned and walked toward the door, her footsteps echoing against the polished floor. Ethan's voice called after her, strained and desperate. Naomi, wait! But she didn't stop. The door swung shut behind her, and the elevator carried her away, each second feeling like a weight lifting from her chest. Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. He hadn't known. Or maybe he had, and he had just chosen to forget. But now he couldn't escape the truth, and neither could she. As the elevator doors opened onto the bustling lobby, Naomi stepped out, the cool air brushing against her face. She had come here looking for answers, and now she had them answers, and the bitter sting of a truth she couldn't deny. Ethan was part of the world that had destroyed her life. Whether he knew it or not, he was part of it. And now she would make sure he saw it, every lie, every betrayal, because the past wasn't just a memory. It was a shadow, and it was time to bring it into the light. Ethan Marshall stood frozen in his sleek, glass-walled office, the weight of the folder in his hands feeling heavier than it should. The light from the city skyline poured through the towering windows, but it did nothing to dispel the darkness swirling in his mind. Each page he flipped seemed to peel back another layer of his carefully curated world, revealing a festering wound beneath. His father, Charles Redford, wasn't just a ruthless businessman. He was a thief, a liar, a man who had built his empire by crushing the lives of others. And Ethan had unknowingly become the heir to that legacy of deceit. Naomi Turner, he whispered, her name burning like a brand against his conscience. He remembered the fierce anger in her eyes, the raw pain in her voice. The girl he had once known, the girl he had made a promise to, was now a woman who saw him as an enemy. Ethan's gaze fell on the fake death certificate of Lillian Monroe, Naomi's mother. The date, the signature, all neatly forged, a cruel lie that had erased a life. And beneath that was the land transfer document, the land where New Hope Orphanage once stood, the land now transformed into the Aurora Rising complex, a testament to his family's greed. He slammed the folder shut, his chest heaving.
His mind raced, grasping for any shred of denial, any way to convince himself that this wasn't true. But the evidence was undeniable. His father had stolen everything from Naomi's family, and he had helped build that empire, never questioning, never caring. The office door swung open without warning, and Sophia Harris, his fiancée, swept in with her usual confident stride, her blonde curls bouncing against her shoulders. "Ethan, we need to finalize the guest list for the gala." "Your father wants to—" "Sophia, not now," Ethan snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut. Sophia's perfectly composed smile faltered. "Excuse me? What's wrong with you?" "Wrong?" Ethan laughed bitterly, rubbing his forehead. "Everything. Everything is wrong. My entire life is a lie." Sophia's expression shifted, a mix of confusion and irritation. "Ethan, what are you talking about? You're the CEO of Lancaster Group. You're engaged to me." "You have everything." "Everything?" Ethan's voice rose. "Everything built on lies, on stolen land, on shattered lives. Did you know about this?" He flung the folder onto the glass desk, the papers scattering like fallen leaves. Sophia's eyes scanned the documents, her face paling. "What is this?" "It's the truth," Ethan shouted. "My father stole this land. He destroyed an orphanage, forced a woman to disappear, and I've been living in a castle built on their ashes." "Ethan, calm down," Sophia whispered, her gaze flicking nervously to the glass walls where employees in the hallway might overhear. "Don't do this. Don't make a scene." "Make a scene?" Ethan's laugh was a sharp, bitter bark. "My entire life is a scene, a performance. And I've been playing the obedient son, the perfect CEO, while everything I believed in was a lie." Sophia stepped closer, her voice low and urgent. "You need to control yourself. Whatever this is, we can fix it." "Talk to your father, get his side. There must be an explanation." "An explanation?" Ethan's voice trembled with rage. "The only explanation is that he's a monster." "And I was too blind to see it." Sophia's expression hardened. "Ethan, you need to calm down. This isn't just about you. This is about the company, about our future. Your father has always known what's best. He built this empire. By destroying people like Naomi and her family," Ethan interrupted, his voice thick with emotion. "Do you understand that, Sophia? Real people were hurt. Their lives were shattered, and we built skyscrapers on their graves." "Then forget about it," Sophia whispered, her eyes cold now. "People get hurt in business. That's how the world works. Your father understands that. And you will too." Ethan stared at her, the weight of her words settling over him like a suffocating fog. For a moment, he saw her not as his beautiful, sophisticated fiancée, but as a stranger, a reflection of the world he had always been a part of. A world without empathy, without conscience. A world he no longer wanted. "Get out," he whispered. Sophia's eyes widened. "What?" "I said get out." Ethan's voice erupted, his fist slamming against the glass desk, the impact leaving a faint crack. "If you think I'm going to keep pretending, keep living in this lie, then you don't know me at all." Sophia's face twisted with anger. "Fine. Ruin yourself, Ethan. Throw away everything you have for some pathetic sob story." She turned and stormed out, the glass door swinging shut with a sharp click. Silence fell over the office, but Ethan's mind was anything but calm. His breath came in sharp, ragged gasps, his hands trembling. He didn't belong in this world, a world of polished floors and designer suits, where people were nothing more than stepping stones. Naomi had tried to show him the truth, and he had been too blind to see it. But now the blinders were gone. Ethan grabbed his phone, his fingers shaking as he dialed. It rang twice before the deep, authoritative voice answered. "Ethan, I'm in the middle of a meeting. What is it?" Charles Redford's voice was calm, controlled the voice of a man who never lost. "Is it true?" Ethan demanded, his voice breaking.
Did you steal that land? Did you force Naomi's mother to disappear? A brief silence, then a cold chuckle.
So she found you, did she? I was wondering how long it would take. Answer me, Ethan shouted. I did what was necessary, Charles replied, his voice devoid of remorse. They were nothing dirt beneath our feet. You don't build an empire by worrying about the ants. Ethan's breath hitched. You destroyed them. You destroyed everything. I built a legacy, Charles corrected, his voice hard. And you are part of it. Remember that. The call ended with a cold click. Ethan stared at the phone in his hand, his entire body numb, but deep inside, something shifted a crack in the fortress of lies that had been his life. His father had spoken the truth, but for the first time, Ethan saw it for what it was, a truth built on pain, on cruelty, on stolen dreams. And in that moment, he made a decision. He would not be his father's son. Ethan grabbed the folder, stuffed it into his bag, and walked out of the office, ignoring the curious stares of his employees. His steps were quick, his jaw set, his heart burning with a new determination. He was done living in the shadows. It was time to choose a side, and he knew exactly where he needed to be. Naomi Turner stood behind the counter of Riverside Auto Shop, her hands busy tightening the bolts of a stubborn engine, but her mind was anywhere but on the repair. Ever since she had confronted Ethan Marshall, a storm of emotions had been raging within her. Rage, betrayal, despair, all tangled together, threatening to consume her. But beneath the anger was something else, a flicker of doubt. She had seen the shock in Ethan's eyes, the way his hands had trembled when he saw the documents. Could it be possible that he hadn't known, that he wasn't part of his father's ruthless schemes? The chime of the shop door jolted her from her thoughts. Naomi looked up, and her heart skipped a beat. Standing in the doorway, looking out of place among the oil-stained tools and grease-splattered walls, was Ethan Marshall. His crisp suit was gone, replaced by a simple grey shirt and dark jeans. His face was pale, his hair slightly disheveled, and there was a desperate intensity in his eyes. "Naomi," he breathed, stepping forward. "Please, I need to talk to you." Naomi's jaw tightened, and she set down her wrench. "Talk? About what? About how your family stole everything from mine? About how your father buried the truth?" "I didn't know," Ethan insisted, his voice raw. "I swear to you, I didn't know. My father, he hid everything from me." Naomi crossed her arms, her expression hard. "And you expect me to believe that?" "You're the CEO of Lancaster Group. You're his heir. Don't pretend you're some innocent bystander." "I was a pawn," Ethan whispered, his voice trembling. "My whole life it was all his plan. He raised me to follow his rules, to become his perfect successor. I never questioned it. But now I see it. I see everything he's done." Naomi's resolve wavered. She wanted to stay angry, to cling to the fury that had fueled her. But looking at Ethan now, she didn't see the cold, arrogant CEO she had confronted in his office. She saw something else, fear, shame, and a desperate need for redemption. "Why are you here?" she demanded, her voice softer now but still guarded. "Because I want to help you," Ethan said, his voice gaining strength. "I can't change what my father did. But I can help you expose him. I can help you get your land back, your mother's name cleared. Please, Naomi, let me do something right." Naomi's heart pounded. A part of her wanted to throw him out, to tell him that she didn't need his pity or his help. But another part of her, the part that still remembered the boy she had once trusted, whispered that maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth. "You really think you can take him down?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Your own father?" "The most powerful man in Greenwood Valley?" "I have to try," Ethan replied, his gaze unwavering. "I've already lost everything else. My fiancé, my place at the company. I walked away from it all." "Your fiancé?" Naomi raised an eyebrow.
Sophia Harris. She chose his world over me, Ethan admitted, a bitter smile crossing his lips. But I don't care anymore. If I keep living in his shadow pretending nothing's wrong, then I'm no better than him.
Naomi studied him, searching his eyes for any hint of deception. But all she saw was sincerity, and beneath it, a pain that mirrored her own. "Fine," she said at last, her voice steady. "But understand this, Ethan, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for my mother, for my family, for the truth."
"And if you betray me, if you even think about backing out?"
"I won't," Ethan promised, his voice firm. "You have my word." Naomi hesitated, then nodded. "Then we need a plan. I have some documents, proof that my mother's land was stolen, but it's not enough. We need more. We need to show the world what your father has done." Ethan's expression hardened. "I can get you what you need. Lancaster Group has files, records, everything my father tried to bury. I still have access." "You'd betray your own family?" Naomi asked, her voice laced with disbelief. "Family?" Ethan laughed bitterly. "My father doesn't see me as family. He sees me as a tool, and if I don't do this, then I'm just as guilty as he is." A tense silence filled the shop, broken only by the faint hum of the ceiling fan. Naomi's gaze softened, and for the first time since their reunion, she saw something in Ethan she had thought long gone, the boy she had once trusted, the boy who had promised to come back. "All right," she said, extending her hand. "Then we work together. But this is my fight, Ethan." "You're just here to help." Ethan reached out, his hand gripping hers, his touch warm and steady. "Understood." Just then, the shop door swung open, and Henry Blake walked in, his graying beard and weathered face lighting up with surprise when he saw Ethan. "What's going on here?" Naomi turned, a faint smile touching her lips. "We're getting justice, Uncle Henry, and Ethan here, he's going to help us." Henry's sharp gaze shifted to Ethan, his eyes narrowing. "Is that so?" "You better be serious, kid, because if you're just here to save your own skin—" "I'm not," Ethan said firmly. "I'm here to make things right." Henry's stern expression softened just slightly, and he nodded. "Well, I suppose that's a start." Naomi released Ethan's hand, her gaze steady. "First, we need to get those files. Everything your father has on the land, the orphanage, and the Monroe family." "I can do that," Ethan assured her. "But we have to be careful. If he finds out—" "He won't," Naomi said, her voice cold with determination. "Not until it's too late." Ethan's lips twitched into a faint smile. "I didn't realize you were so dangerous." "You have no idea," Naomi replied, a hint of warmth in her voice. And for the first time, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. Not the shallow, polished hope of corporate success or a staged marriage, but something real. A chance to be more than his father's shadow. A chance to do something good. As the sun began to set over Greenwood Valley, casting long shadows across the dusty shop, Naomi and Ethan stood together, two souls, scarred by the past but bound by a common goal, and for the first time, they were no longer enemies, they were allies. Naomi Turner stood in the cool, dimly lit back room of Riverside Auto Shop, her fingers tracing the edges of the worn folder on the table. Around her, the smell of motor oil and old grease mixed with the scent of fresh coffee brewing on the counter. But her mind wasn't on the familiar comfort of the shop. It was on the mountain of secrets she was about to expose. "Are you sure about this?" Henry Blake asked, leaning against the doorway, his weathered face etched with concern. "Going after Lancaster Group, going after Charles Redford, you're picking a fight with a giant, Naomi." Naomi looked up, her dark eyes blazing with determination. "He already picked this fight when he stole our land, when he forced my mother to disappear, when he buried the truth." Henry sighed, rubbing his graying beard. "And Ethan, can you really trust him?" Naomi hesitated, her gaze drifting to the old toolbox on the shelf, the one her mother had given her when she first learned to fix cars. "I don't know," she admitted. But he's all I've got," And right now, he has more to lose than I do. As if summoned by his name, the bell above the shop door chimed, and Ethan Marshall stepped inside, his expression tense but resolute. He carried a slim leather briefcase, his eyes scanning the room before locking onto Naomi's. "Did you get them?" Naomi asked, her voice calm but expectant. Ethan nodded, setting the briefcase on the table and flipping it open. "I did. Internal documents from Lancaster Group, contracts, emails, everything that shows how my father manipulated the land deal. How he forged the death certificate for your mother." Naomi's fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the papers, her eyes scanning the cold, clinical language of the contracts. Each line was a dagger, each signature a reminder of the power that had been used to crush her family. This is everything," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "Proof of what he did." Ethan leaned against the edge of the table, his gaze dark. "It's not just your family, Naomi. My father has done this to dozens of families, taking their land, forging documents, pushing them out under the guise of urban development. He doesn't care who he destroys, as long as he profits." Naomi's jaw tightened. "And you were supposed to inherit all of this. To keep it going." "I never wanted it," Ethan whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I just didn't know how to escape it. But now, I have to do what's right." Henry's sharp gaze never left Ethan. "And you're willing to burn your father's empire to the ground to do that?" "If that's what it takes," Ethan replied, his voice steady. "Then yes." Naomi's heart pounded. For the first time, she saw not just a man trying to escape his father's shadow, but someone willing to fight for something real. Someone willing to lose everything to make things right. "Then we don't have time to waste," she said, her voice firm. "We need to make this public show everyone what your father has done." Ethan frowned. "It won't be that easy. Lancaster Group has an entire legal team. My father has friends in high places, politicians, lawyers, media executives. If we just release this, they'll bury it." "Not if we make it impossible for them to ignore," Naomi countered. "We need a stage, a moment where everyone is watching, where your father can't hide." Ethan's eyes lit up with understanding. "The Aurora Rising complex. My father is hosting the grand opening in 2 days. Media, investors, politicians, they'll all be there." "And so will we," Naomi said, a fierce determination burning in her eyes. "We'll bring the proof, and we'll expose him in front of everyone." Henry shook his head, a worried frown etched on his face. "That's a dangerous gamble. If your father realizes what you're doing, Ethan, he won't hesitate to shut you down." "I know," Ethan admitted. "But it's the only way." "Then we need a plan," Naomi declared. "Henry, can you make a few copies of these documents, just in case?" Henry nodded, taking the folder. "I'll keep them safe. If anything goes wrong—" "Nothing will go wrong," Naomi interrupted, though a flicker of doubt crossed her face. "We just have to stay one step ahead." Ethan took a deep breath, pushing away the rising tide of fear in his chest. "I'll get us into the event. My father thinks I've come to my senses, that I've accepted my place by his side. He won't see this coming." Naomi's gaze softened slightly. "And if he does?" "Then we deal with it," Ethan whispered. "Together." A quiet but determined silence settled over the room. Naomi looked from Ethan to Henry, her two unlikely allies in a battle she had never expected to fight. But now that she was here, now that the truth was within her grasp, there was no turning back. "I'll get Clara to stay with Mrs. Jenkins for the night," Naomi said, thinking of her daughter. "She doesn't need to be anywhere near this." "Smart move," Henry agreed. "Last thing we need is her getting caught in the crossfire." Ethan's gaze lingered on Naomi, a mix of admiration and worry in his eyes. "Are you sure about this?" "I've never been more sure," Naomi replied, her voice unwavering. "For years, I thought I was just trying to survive, but now I know I'm fighting for something. For my mother, for my family."
For the truth. Ethan nodded, a faint smile touching his lips.
Then we fight together. As the sun began to set over Greenwood Valley, casting long shadows across the dusty garage, Naomi, Ethan, and Henry stood together, a mechanic, a fallen heir, and an old man who had seen too many broken dreams. The odds were against them. Their enemy was powerful, ruthless, and prepared to do anything to protect his empire. But they had something Charles Redford didn't, the truth. And they were ready to shine a light on it, because sometimes even the strongest shadows couldn't withstand the power of the truth. The grand ballroom of the Aurora Rising complex gleamed beneath the dazzling crystal chandeliers, the soft golden light casting a warm glow over the sea of perfectly dressed guests. Rows of white-draped tables lined the expansive hall, each adorned with ornate floral centerpieces, and the soft murmur of elite conversation filled the air. Ethan Marshall stood at the edge of the room, his gaze sweeping over the gathering of investors, politicians, and media personalities who had come to witness the grand opening. His heart pounded beneath his crisp, tailored suit, but his face remained calm. It was a skill he had learned over years of corporate events, hiding fear beneath a mask of confidence. But tonight, that mask was barely holding. Naomi Turner stood by his side, her dark curls falling gracefully over her shoulders, her simple black dress a stark contrast to the glittering gowns around her. Yet she carried herself with a quiet strength, her eyes scanning the room with a fierce determination. Beside her, Henry Blake stood with the same resolute calm he had always shown, his rugged face unreadable beneath the soft light. "I can't believe they call this Aurora Rising," Naomi whispered, her voice tight. "They built this over the land they stole, over my family's home." Ethan's jaw tightened. Not for much longer. Tonight, the truth comes out. Naomi's fingers curled around the small USB drive in her clutch, the digital copy of the documents they had gathered. Land transfers, forged death certificates, internal emails, all of it proof of Charles Redford's crimes. But it wasn't just about the documents. It was about the moment, about making sure the world saw the truth. On the main stage, Charles Redford stood beneath a massive LED screen, displaying a sweeping aerial view of the Aurora Rising complex. His silver hair was perfectly combed, his tailored suit gleamed under the lights, and his practiced smile radiated charm and authority. "Ladies and gentlemen," Charles's voice echoed through the ballroom, confident and smooth. "Tonight, we celebrate a vision, a dream brought to life. Aurora Rising is not just a development, it is a beacon of progress, a promise of a brighter future." The audience erupted in polite applause, but to Naomi, each clap was like a slap in the face. A future built on stolen land, a lie wrapped in luxury. "Soon, we will begin the official ribbon-cutting ceremony," Charles continued, his gaze sweeping the room. "But first, a few words from the next generation, my son, Ethan Marshall." Ethan's heart lurched, but he forced a calm smile as the spotlight shifted to him. This was it. This was their moment. "Thank you, Father," Ethan began, stepping onto the stage, his voice steady. "It's an honor to stand here tonight, surrounded by so many esteemed guests, celebrating what has been called a vision of progress." A polite murmur of approval swept through the crowd. But Naomi's eyes were fixed on Ethan, her fingers clenching around the USB. He had to do this. He had to make them see. "But as we celebrate," Ethan continued, his voice growing stronger, "I believe it's time we speak the truth about what Aurora Rising truly is. About what it was built on." Charles's smile faltered, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. "Ethan, perhaps this isn't the time." "It is exactly the time," Ethan interrupted, his voice ringing out with clarity. "Because tonight, we are not just unveiling a new complex. We are unveiling the truth." Naomi's heart raced as she stepped forward, raising her voice. This land was stolen. My family's land." My mother's land, taken through forged documents and buried under lies. A shocked silence fell over the room, the murmur of polite conversation freezing in the air. Cameras shifted, reporters leaning forward, their lenses focusing on the stage. Charles's smile disappeared entirely, his face turning pale.
"Security!" he snapped. "Get them out of here!"
But Ethan held up his hand. "No!"
They deserve to know the truth. You all do. Naomi stepped beside him, her voice clear and unwavering. This is the proof. She raised the USB, holding it high for everyone to see.
Emails, contracts, forged certificates, all signed by Charles Redford, all of it showing how he took this land, how he erased my mother's name. Charles's face twisted with fury. Lies. Baseless accusations. Really? Ethan shot back, his voice laced with defiance. Then why did you lie to me, father? Why did you hide everything? Why did you destroy lives just to build your empire? A ripple of shock swept through the audience. Whispers turned to murmurs, and cameras flashed, capturing every second. Reporters began to rise from their seats, their eyes bright with the scent of a scandal. "Shut this down!" Charles shouted, waving to the security guards rushing forward. But Henry stepped in front of Naomi, his burly frame blocking their path.
Don't even think about it, he growled, his voice calm but deadly. Ethan turned to the audience, his gaze piercing. My father didn't just take Naomi's land. He did this to countless families, manipulating laws, forging documents, all in the name of profit. Charles lunged forward, his face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful! I'm not your pawn anymore!" Ethan roared, his voice drowning out the chaos. "You wanted a perfect heir, a perfect son, to carry on your empire of lies, but I'm done being your puppet." Naomi's heart soared, a fierce sense of justice burning in her chest. "This is just the beginning," she declared, "because the truth can't be buried forever." As if on cue, the LED screen behind them flickered, and a series of documents flashed across it: the forged land deeds, the death certificate of Lillian Monroe, the emails proving the conspiracy. Gasps echoed through the ballroom, and cameras flashed wildly. Charles stumbled back, his face ashen. "No, this can't be happening." But it was. The truth was out, and the empire he had built on stolen dreams was crumbling before his eyes. "Security!" "Arrest them!" Charles screamed, his voice cracking. But the guards hesitated, their eyes darting between the furious tycoon and the overwhelming evidence on the screen. The guests began to whisper, some already pulling out their phones, recording, streaming the chaos live. Naomi looked at Ethan, a fierce pride in her eyes. "We did it." Ethan's gaze softened, and for a brief moment, he smiled. "No, you did it." But as the chaos erupted around them, Naomi knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Not until the world saw the truth, and not until Charles Redford answered for his crimes. The footage of the Aurora Rising Complex's disastrous grand opening spread across social media like wildfire. Videos of Ethan Marshall's impassioned speech, Naomi Turner's accusation, and the flashing documents on the massive screen went viral. News anchors speculated, legal analysts debated, and millions watched the stunning collapse of a corporate giant in real time. Within 24 hours, the name Charles Redford was a trending topic, but not in the way he had always imagined. Headlines splashed across major news networks. Empire of Lies, Lancaster Group exposed for land theft and fraud, Charles Redford accused of forgery, illegal land deals. Heir defies dynasty, Ethan Marshall exposes his own family's corruption. But at the center of it all was Naomi Turner, the mechanic who had dared to stand against one of the most powerful men in Greenwood Valley. Her face, framed by her dark curls, her fierce eyes blazing with determination, became a symbol of courage. The woman who had been left with nothing now stood as the voice of truth. Inside Lancaster Tower, the atmosphere was chaos. Lawyers scrambled to contain the damage, executives whispered in panicked circles, and Charles Redford's office door remained firmly shut.
He was a man under siege, his empire crumbling around him, his reputation destroyed. Ethan stood in his own office, now stripped of the luxury and grandeur he had once taken for granted. A cardboard box sat on his desk, half filled with personal belongings, framed photos, a small wooden carving, his nameplate. He was packing up. His resignation had already been submitted. He couldn't be part of this, not anymore. "Are you sure about this?" came a familiar voice. Ethan turned to see Naomi standing in the doorway, her expression a mix of relief and concern. "I'm sure," Ethan replied, taping the box shut. "I can't stay here. Not after everything I know. Not after everything I did." "You didn't do this, Ethan," Naomi said, stepping closer. "Your father did, and you helped me expose him. You did the right thing." "Did I?" Ethan whispered, his voice thick with guilt. "Or did I just betray the only family I've ever known?" "Family?" Naomi's voice softened. "Family doesn't lie to you. Family doesn't destroy lives for profit. Your father, he may have given you his name, but he never gave you love." Ethan's gaze fell, the weight of her words pressing down on him. "So what now? My father is going to fight this. He'll use every lawyer, every connection he has to bury this." "Let him try," Naomi replied, her chin lifting defiantly. "Because we have the truth. We have the proof. And the world is watching." Just then, Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "This is Ethan Marshall." "Miss Dick." "Marshall, this is Special Agent Morales with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We would like to speak with you regarding the documents you presented at the Aurora Rising event." Ethan's pulse quickened. "Of course. I'll cooperate fully." "Very well. We are issuing a warrant for the arrest of Charles Redford on charges of forgery, fraud, and illegal land acquisition. Your testimony will be critical in this investigation." "I understand," Ethan replied, his voice steady. "I'll do whatever it takes." The call ended, and Ethan looked up, meeting Naomi's wide eyes. "They're arresting him." A slow, almost disbelieving smile spread across Naomi's face. "It's over. He's actually going to pay for what he did." But even as relief washed over them, Ethan's expression remained conflicted. "It's not over for me. My father will never forgive me for this. He'll see me as a traitor." "Maybe he will," Naomi said, her voice gentle. "But you chose to stand on the side of the truth. That's not betrayal. That's integrity." Ethan's lips quirked into a faint smile. "Thank you for believing in me, even after everything." Naomi's gaze softened. "I never stopped believing in you, Ethan. I just needed you to believe in yourself." They stood in the empty office, a quiet calm settling between them. But outside, the world was anything but calm. Reporters camped outside Lancaster Tower, news helicopters hovered in the sky, and across the city, people whispered about the scandal that had brought down a giant. That evening, Naomi returned to Riverside Auto Shop, her heart still racing. Clara was waiting for her on the porch, her wide eyes filled with questions. "Mom, is it true? Did you bring down Lancaster Group?" Naomi smiled, kneeling in front of her daughter, brushing a stray curl from her cheek. "I didn't do it alone, sweetheart. But yes, we did it." We stood up to them, and the truth came out. Clara's face lit up. "You're a hero, Mom." "No, Clara," Naomi whispered, pulling her daughter into a tight hug. "I'm just a woman who refused to stay silent. And so are you." As the night settled over Greenwood Valley, a sense of peace began to return to Naomi's heart. She had come face to face with the shadows of her past, and she hadn't run. She had fought. And she had won. The next morning, as the sun rose over the dusty streets, news broke that Charles Redford had been taken into custody. Images of the once powerful mogul, handcuffed and escorted by federal agents, filled the news feeds. His expression was a mix of shock and fury, a man who had believed himself untouchable, brought low by the truth. Ethan watched the footage from a small cafe, a steaming cup of coffee in his hands. He should have felt triumphant, but instead, he felt hollow. His father, his family, his entire world had shattered, and he had been the one to break it. But as the camera panned to the crowd gathered outside Lancaster Tower, cheering, waving signs that read, "Justice for the Forgotten," a small smile touched his lips. He had done the right thing. He had chosen the truth. And then his phone buzzed. A message from Naomi. "Come by the shop. We're celebrating, and you're invited." Ethan's smile widened, warmth spreading through his chest. He stood, slipped his phone into his pocket, and walked out into the morning light. Because maybe, just maybe, he hadn't lost everything. Maybe he had found something new, a place where he truly belonged. 6 months had passed since the night the truth shattered the Whittaker empire. 6 months since Naomi Turner had stood on that grand stage, exposed the lies of Charles Redford, and reclaimed her family's stolen legacy. 6 months since Ethan Marshall had stepped out of his father's shadow and chosen to stand on the side of the truth. Today, the sun shone brightly over Greenwood Valley, its warm light spilling across the bustling streets and open fields. But there was something new. A place that had once been a symbol of deceit was now a beacon of hope. Naomi stood in the middle of what was once the Aurora Rising complex. But the luxury skyscrapers had never been built. Instead, the land was now a thriving community park, lush with green lawns, towering trees, and winding walking paths. Children played on the playground, their laughter filling the air. Families strolled beneath the shade of tall oaks, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh flowers. In the center of the park stood a modest stone monument, engraved with the words, "Monroe Family Memorial Park, a place where truth prevails." Beneath the inscription, another line read, "Dedicated to Lillian Monroe and all those who were never forgotten." Naomi touched the cool surface of the stone, her heart swelling with pride and peace. This was what her family's land had become, a place of life, of joy, of remembrance, a place where no one could be erased. "Quite a change, isn't it?" came a familiar voice. Naomi turned to see Ethan approaching, his hands in his pockets, a warm smile on his face. He looked different now, relaxed, his sharp suit replaced by a simple blue shirt and jeans. But there was a light in his eyes, a quiet confidence she hadn't seen before. "It's beautiful," Naomi replied, her voice soft. "Exactly what it should have been all along." Ethan nodded, his gaze drifting to the children playing by the swings. "I'm just glad it didn't become another luxury complex. I think the world has enough of those." Naomi laughed, a gentle, melodic sound that carried on the breeze. "And you? What are you doing these days? Last I heard, you were working with the Monroe Foundation." "I am," Ethan confirmed. "We're opening a new community center next month, a place where kids can learn skills, find mentorship, have a safe place to grow." Just like we never had. A warm pride filled Naomi's heart. "You're making a difference, Ethan." "So are you," Ethan said, his smile softening. "Riverside Auto Shop is becoming a training ground for young women learning auto repair." "I heard you even got Clara helping out," Naomi chuckled. "She's a natural. She's even teaching some of the boys now." Ethan's laughter joined hers, a gentle, comforting sound. For a moment, they simply stood together, watching the life that had blossomed from what was once a place of greed and corruption. "I never thought I'd feel peace again," Naomi whispered, her voice tinged with emotion. "For so many years, all I had was anger. But now I finally feel free." Ethan's gaze softened. "You were always strong, Naomi. You just needed the truth to set you free." She turned to him, her eyes shining. "And you chose the truth over everything you had. Your father, your legacy. You gave it all up." "I didn't lose anything worth keeping," Ethan said quietly. And I gained something. I never thought I could have a family. Naomi's breath caught. A family? Ethan nodded, his hand gently reaching for hers. You, Clara, Henry, you showed me that family isn't about power or money. It's about trust, about standing by each other, about doing the right thing. Naomi's fingers intertwined with his, her heart racing. And what about us? Ethan's smile widened, a soft warmth in his gaze. That's up to you, but I'd like to find out. Naomi's lips curled into a smile, a blush coloring her cheeks. I think I'd like that too. A sudden burst of laughter drew their attention, and they saw Clara running toward them, her curls bouncing with each step. Mom! Uncle Ethan! Come on, they're starting the picnic. Naomi laughed, letting go of Ethan's hand, just long enough to sweep Clara into a hug. We're coming, sweetheart. Ethan watched them, his heart swelling with a joy he had never known. This was real. This was true. A life built on honesty, on love, on second chances. As they walked together toward the picnic tables, where Henry was already waving them over, Ethan felt a sense of peace settle over him. His father's empire was gone, his name tarnished, but he didn't care. He had a new name now, Ethan Monroe. A name that meant something real. They reached the picnic area where neighbors and friends had gathered, sharing food, laughter, and stories. Henry handed Ethan a plate piled high with barbecue ribs. Eat up, kid. I can't have you getting weak now that you're part of the family. Ethan grinned, the warmth of the words sinking into his soul. Wouldn't dream of it, Henry. Naomi leaned against the picnic table, watching the bustling crowd, the children's laughter filling the air. She looked at Ethan, her heart full. This is everything I ever wanted. Ethan smiled, his gaze never leaving her. It's just the beginning. As the sun dipped lower on the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Naomi, Ethan, Clara, and Henry sat together, surrounded by the people they had saved, the lives they had touched. And in that golden light, beneath the towering trees of Monroe Family Memorial Park, they laughed, they loved, and they healed. Because sometimes, from the ashes of a shattered empire, something far more precious can be born. Life can be cruel and unjust, but the truth always finds a way to come to light. Naomi Turner's journey is a powerful reminder that no one should be forgotten, and no secret can remain buried forever. She lost everything: her family, her land, and her childhood. But she never gave up hope. Instead of letting pain consume her, she turned it into strength and fought for justice. Ethan Marshall, once trapped in a web of wealth and lies, found the courage to stand against his own family. He learned that family is not defined by wealth or reputation, but by truth, love, and loyalty. By choosing honesty over comfort, he didn't just free himself from a life of deceit, he found a real family and a place to belong. This story reminds us that no matter how dark the past may seem, we always have a choice: to live in the shadows of deception or to step into the light of truth. Standing up for what is right not only sets us free, it can also build a better future for those we love.